Hello there, it's Andy Parks from the Washington Times, and I'll be joined by Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor Stephen Dinan right after this. You know, as a listener to my podcast, you qualify to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Simply go to washingtontimes.com/Andy. That's washingtontimes.com/ANDY. And joining me now is indeed Stephen Dinan, Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Andy.
Illegal immigrants test limits of Second Amendment in case now pending at the Supreme Court. This is a crazy story.
Well, there have always been this question of how far constitutional rights apply to illegal immigrants who are migrants who are in the country without the government's permission. It's sort of taken as a given and has been established court precedent that things like criminal defense rights, the right to an attorney if you are charged with a criminal offense, the right to remain silent, those sorts of things, constitutional rights do belong to illegal immigrants in this country under court precedent. It appears to be that, First Amendment rights of free speech and freedom of religion are deemed to apply to illegal immigrants. But there are questions about, right of peaceable assembly. Does that right apply to illegal immigrants? It's a gray area. Then you get into other rights, such as the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. From a constitutional law perspective, it's sort of fascinating. The Second Amendment doesn't it uses the phrase the right of the people. And so the question is, who are the people? There are places in the Constitution where when it says the people, that is considered to be everybody, anyone in the country, including illegal immigrants. There is a precedent on the Second Amendment where Justice Scalia, sort of the key precedent back in 2008, when the court ruled that the Second Amendment is a personal right, that it belongs to you and me and individuals, an individual right to keep and bear arms rather than a collective right that belongs to the states and the militia and that sort of stuff. In that ruling, Justice Scalia, who wrote the majority opinion, pointedly said law-abiding citizens have this right. There are some folks, there are some lawyers and some illegal immigrants who are challenging that and saying, no, the text of the Second Amendment says the people, and therefore an illegal immigrant is a person in the U.S. and should have that Second Amendment right. The case I wrote about in particular, there are several different cases that have come up that I've been tracking. Actually, I've been tracking dozens of them over the years because it's been such a fascinating issue. But one of the cases that I chose to highlight in the story, and this is the case where there's a petition asking the Supreme Court to hear it. Illegal immigrant from Mexico came as a teenager, got involved in gangs, says he left the gang life behind him 5-6 years ago. He was at a barbecue, I think in 2016, at a barbecue in Brooklyn. And he says that there was a gang that was that took bats and machetes and started attacking another kid. He borrowed a gun from a friend, shot a few shots into the air, and dispersed the gang that was attacking the kid, and then handed the gun back. He says he was using that weapon as protection, which is what the Second Amendment is all about, and that right should belong to him. He ended up being charged and actually convicted of this offense, and he's now appealing that to the Supreme Court, saying, no, he has a constitutional right too. So there's a lot there, and it's really fascinating from both the constitutional side and the immigration side. I'll be interested to see. I sort of think that the justices don't decide to hear the case, but from a personal standpoint, I'd love to see them take it and sort of let us know the limits of constitutional rights and illegal immigrants. One other quick aside on this. For the Biden administration that is extending so many privileges and in some cases rights to illegal immigrants, it is interesting that this is one right that they do not believe illegal immigrants should have. So it's, they believe they should have the right to work, they should have permits, they should be protected from deportation, they should get some taxpayer benefits, but they draw the line when it comes to extending gun rights.
Gotcha. Russell Building, named for a segregationist senator, remains. The decision to change falls to Schumer. Question is, will he do it?
I've been bugging his office for about 5 years now on this question and can't seem to get an answer out of them about why they haven't moved forward. Schumer, your listeners may remember back in 2018 when Senator John McCain died, Chuck Schumer immediately said, I'm going to introduce a resolution to rename the Russell Senate Office Building after John McCain as an honor to this senator that we all love and honor and cherish. He never actually introduced the resolution. In 2019, President Trump was saying bad things about McCain again. Schumer, sort of capitalizing on the moment, put out a tweet saying, I'm going to reintroduce my resolution to rename the Russell Building, and we're going to get this done. Of course, first of all, he never introduced it in the first place. Second, he never reintroduced it. There's no record of Chuck Schumer ever following through on either of those promises. Well, fast forward now, for the last year, Chuck Schumer has been the majority leader of the United States Senate. He could single-handedly bring that name change to the floor and force a vote on it, and he hasn't done that. His office is clammed up, won't say anything about it, about the resolution, won't say why he never introduced the resolutions in the past, won't say why he hasn't brought this to the floor now. There are some other interesting aspects to it. Part of the opposition back when McCain died, both of Georgia's senators at the time, both Republicans. Richard Russell was a segregationist senator from Georgia and a master of Senate rules, and used those Senate rules, in particular the filibuster, masterfully to prevent civil rights legislation from passing for about 3 decades. So Georgia's 2 Republican senators in 2018 either opposed or not in favor of changing the name. And, senators oftentimes sort of abide by that state courtesy. Well, Georgia's now has 2 Democratic senators. When we approached them and said, hey, are you guys interested in changing the name? It's such a weird issue for a Senate that is so eager, and a Democratic Party that is so eager to oust the Robert E. Lee statue, to change the names of military bases, to sort of do this historic cleansing, for them to actually be sitting in an office building named after a guy whose reason for existence in the Senate, by and large, was to preserve segregation, is really, really stunning.
Yeah. 52,000 Afghan evacuees released into the U.S. in 2021. All right, I give up. Where are they?
It's a good question. We don't know. They once they're released, they are resettled by resettlement agencies, and they're, I think it's the number. They're more than 100. It might have been 200 resettlement agencies that have been involved in getting these folks settled. So they're still almost certainly settled throughout the country. The speed, it took basically from September through the end of December. So those 4 months, 52,000 were processed and released. It's a massive undertaking for the government to do. It's a massive undertaking for those refugee services. And we talked about this in the past. There are so many questions about who these people are, whether we actually know their real identities. Actually, Andy, I'll give you a tidbit that wasn't in that story, and I may still end up including in a different story, but a whole lot of those Afghan refugees just celebrated a birthday on January 1st. You want to know why? Because when they came here, they didn't give birthdays. They're like, we don't really deal with birthdays in my part of Afghanistan. So the government just assigned them all the birthday of January 1st of whatever year, matched however old they said they were. So that's a real security flaw. When we go back in the future, let's say that the government that figures out, get some fingerprints and get some bad information about somebody with the same name as an Afghan refugee or Afghan evacuee, and they go back and they try and say, well, let's see, is that really the same guy? Oh, no. The guy we have here has a birthday of June 24th, but that guy says January 1st. That can't be the same guy. A government database now has a made-up birthday for these people because we didn't know who they were and didn't know when they actually, their actual birthday, their actual biographic information. That's sort of how ridiculous this process has been in getting those folks out and resettled here. We simply don't know who a lot of these people are.
Before I let you go, what are you working on?
Working on a story about Customs and Border Protection, the agency that oversees border ports of entry and the Border Patrol, finally, belatedly released data on fiscal year 2021. Now, the calendar year just ended, but fiscal year 2021 ended 3 months ago. Usually this data comes out sometime in October or November, but Homeland Security just released it this week, and it's some fascinating details details in there. The biggest one is that illegal immigration at the US-Mexico border is no longer a Mexican problem. It is now firmly a problem of Central Americans and, more importantly, of people from even further afield. So to boil it down, only 28% of illegal immigrants caught at the border in the last year were Mexican. That is by far the lowest ever on record. And that's really, really, really stunning demographic change. By contrast, nearly 400,000 of them were women and girls, which is almost certainly a record to have that sort of rate. So just the demographic changes, what the Biden administration has overseen, and some experts argue has created this completely different border situation. And the reason it all matters is because women and migrants from further afield than Mexico and the Northern Triangle, much tougher to deport, much tougher to process. It just creates a whole nightmare for border security matters. And those changing demographics appear to be here to stay, at least under the Biden administration.
Folks, you can read all of Stephen Dinan's stories at WashingtonTimes.com. As always, thank you, Stephen.
My pleasure, Andy. Happy New Year.
Washington Times Assistant Managing Editor, Stephen Dinan. Thanks for joining me today, and remember to receive a 50% discount on an annual digital subscription to the Washington Times. Go to WashingtonTimes.com/Andy. You'll get 24/7 digital access to the Washington Times at 50% off. Again, go to WashingtonTimes.com/ANDY. I'm Andy Parks. Have a great day.